Chapter 2, Culture and Communication. So, understanding what culture is would be the first step in looking at how culture can affect communication between people. The book gives the definition of culture as consisting of relatively specialized elements of the lifestyle of a group of people that are passed on from one generation to the next through communication, not through genes. So, is the fact that you have blue eyes part of your culture? No, because that's passed down through genes. Is the fact that you eat with a fork part of your culture? Yes, because you learned through communication how to eat with a fork. There are a lot of elements of life that fall into the category of culture. Our culture teaches us beliefs, how we should believe, what we should believe, teaches us ways of thinking, teaches us the laws that are part of a society, teaches us language, ways of behaving, attitudes, artifacts. Artifacts are man-made things in a society. For instance, the fact that we drive cars to get places. Is that part of our culture? Absolutely. So, can you think of anything else that's part of culture? This is a pretty good summation of what culture consists of. I like this quote by Margaret Wheatley, who is a author and social scientist. It's not differences that divide us, it's our judgments about each other that do. Two terms that you'll need to know. Enculturation. Enculturation is the learning of the culture you were born into. When you become enculturated, that starts from the time you were born. Acculturation refers to you learning the rules and norms of a different culture. For instance, you move to Japan. You become acculturated into the Japanese culture to some extent. Or you marry into a family that belongs to a different religion. Or you marry into a family that has different traditions at the holidays. Or maybe the family hunts and you don't know, you were not raised as a hunter. You become acculturated into a different culture. Culture is especially important to learn about when we're studying communication today because of several factors. And we'll look at each one of these to some extent. The first one is changing demographics in the U.S. How many of you plan to go to a four-year university? If you do, you'll probably run into people from many different countries, many different cultures. And when we talk about culture, I know the easiest way to think about culture is by thinking about countries. But that's just one type of culture, a country culture or nationality culture. There are other types of cultures, and we'll look at those too. And we all belong to subcultures also within a larger culture. But people travel more frequently. People contact or in contact with people from different cultures, from all over the world, from different religions, different countries, different ways of thinking politically. So there's a lot of more diversity in the world. College campuses are certainly getting more multicultural, and we see that even here on Jackson College campus. It's very probably a good education for all of us, both us who are natives to Michigan and the U.S. and those students who are here with us for a time for them to learn about us. We also today are more sensitive to differences, and we look more favorably and we're more tolerant by and large in general. This is definitely in general because I know there are still some insensitivities, but by and large today we're better at tolerating and understanding and being interested in different cultures than we were in the past. We also have a greater degree of economic interdependency. How many of you have known people who traveled for business outside of the US? How many of you have known people who worked for a company that was owned by Germans, Japanese, Canadians? So we're quite interdependent today, the entire world, much more interdependent than we were years ago. There have always also been, and this goes really along with the changing demographics and economic interdependency, the advances in technology. I mean, think about it. I'm sure most of the folks in this class have had some interaction on the internet with people outside of the boundaries of your own national culture. So the economic interdependency, really the relationship of nations is highly intertwined today. And our technology is such that we can have instantaneous communication and real time communication with people halfway around the world. It's pretty amazing. That last one in the list talks about communication competence. Well, knowing and understanding the ways of different cultures is even more necessary today because of that interdependence and the speed of technology. And remember what we said competence meant when we were talked about it in the first chapter. Knowing, being aware of, and understanding and being able to use our knowledge. Now, this is really the meat of this chapter. And the seven dimensions of cultural differences, we're going to look at each one of them. And these are seven dimensions that go into creating cultural differences. These could apply to countries, they could apply to families, um, any cultural group, religions, parts of the country. We'll look at each one of these, and we'll definitely be talking more and elaborating on these in class. But I'll give you the basics of each one. Let's look at the first one. Every culture falls on between being highly individualistic or highly collectivist. So, the way to determine if a culture is more individual or more collective, let's look at what an individualist culture would be like. Well, success is based on surpassing others in the group. In other words, each person stands on their own. Each person thinks about themselves first. The individual. Along with this comes competition. This is a more competitive society, more competitive culture. It's me against you. I'm on my own. Uh, and incidentally, a more individualist culture tends to be more direct and say things, yes, no, I agree, I don't agree, make things clear. There's no hedging or hesitation. Now, bear in mind, this is the extreme of an individualist culture. No culture falls completely into the individualist or completely into collectivist group. Cultures just tend to be more one way than the other. And this is true for all of the 7 dimensions we're going to talk about. Okay, so let's look at the collectivist culture. A culture that's more collectivist, well, you consider yourself part of the group. Your success is based on your contribution to your group that you're associated with. This is a more cooperative type of culture. I want to benefit the entire group. And rather than being direct and saying, you're wrong, I'm right, yes, no, people in a collectivist culture might tend to be more what we call face saving. And that means, avoiding hurting others, not making negative evaluations of someone. And this might mean that you don't want to be direct, you want to be more indirect. You don't want to call someone out directly. So it's all about being part of the group and contributing to the group. Now, there's a link for a short video talking about individualist and versus collectivist cultures at the bottom of this slide. And elsewhere on JetNet, right near the link where you got this recorded lecture, I am also placing a PowerPoint of the same slides, and you can access the link through there, or I will also put on the specific link in JetNet, individualist or collectivist culture. So that's the first one. These 7 dimensions are in no particular order.